Hi everyone, this is Diane with the next installment of My Favorite Supplies. Today's category is books. I love books. You can make junk journals without books if you just use cracker boxes and cereal boxes and cardboard and stuff for your covers and junk mail and things like that. But I think most people do use books in some way in their journals. I use them in lots of ways. I use the covers and I use the insides, and sometimes one book will serve both purposes. So I have quite a few categories. I have 10, my top 10 categories of books that I look for and use in my junk journals. The first has to be children's books. I love children's books. So sorry, my Fitbit was making buzzing noises at me. So I have these vintage children's books. They're little storybooks, and I love the covers, but I would also use the pages. And you can use newer children's books too. I just happen to have a lot of vintage ones because I find them at the flea markets. And I use the pages. Now this is a cloth children's book, so I would take that apart and use it. Kind of a plastic page, plastic coated page maybe, and these are vintage cloth ones. But all sizes of books, you can put this in if you can get them out like this. This is called a folio when it's a 2-page spread that's connected. If you could get them out in a folio, you can just sew it down the center, put that in your signature. Or you can take separate pages. You can cut images out and use them for all kinds of embellishments. You can take quotes out of the stories, which is really fun to do. I am going out into the wide, wide world to seek my fortune. That would be a great thing to cut out and just glue onto a page for a random quote. And little poetry books are fun. So you get the idea. There's all kinds of children's books. Whatever catches your eye, what you see when you go to thrift stores and estate sales and whatnot. I get most of mine at flea markets. I like the big books also. I can fold this into a signature, one single page. Or I could make envelopes out of it. There's all kinds of things you can do with children's books and children's book pages. The next category is, well, let me show you a book that I made out of a children's book. This is a children's music book. And it's got a beautiful cover, and I just created this is my reading journal. So I write down the books I've read and some quotes out of the books, which are really fun to keep. The next category is a children's book, but it has its own category because it's little golden books. I have to move things off my table as I go, or I won't have room for anything. The table's pretty full here. So little golden books, I find a lot of vintage ones at the flea markets. That's an example of a vintage one. Got 2 of that one. And we have our favorites. We all have our favorites. If you're into the golden books, that one's really beat up, but I would still use it. Even if I decide not to use the beat up cover, I can use the pages. So I look for the special ones and keep the ones I really would want to use, and I sell a lot of them in my shop. I consider the Wonder Books by who is this? I guess it's just Wonder Books. I consider Wonder Books and Rand McNally books in the same category because they're the same size, and I pretty much do the same things with them. So there's so many fun children's books, and I've been having really great success finding these types of books this year. And here's an example of a journal that I made with a little golden book, my very favorite one from childhood, as a matter of fact. I have shown this before and talked about it before. I just put a quilt, an old piece of quilt on the back and collaged on the back cover, on the spine there. And it is a wonderful little book. I love this little book. I put a lot of my favorite papers and fabrics and images in it because this was one of my favorite books, and I was keeping this, so I wanted to be able to keep some of my favorites contained in this book. Next category is botanical, and I include wildlife in that. So I mostly have botanical images here, but of course the Edith Holden books are popular. I have never ever found an Edith Holden book in a thrift store or anywhere around here. Nowhere. So I bought one of each online. The Edwardian Diary of... No. The Edwardian Diary... How does that go? The Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady. That's what it is. And then there's another one. I forgot the title of the second one. But she has 2 books. And then there are other books that use her images, which are like date books and maybe a recipe book. I don't know. I've never seen those. But I've seen them on other people's channels. So these are wonderful images to cut things out or fold into a signature or use text as background on a tag or something. So those are a great resource. Edith Holden. And I have this one from a flea market. It was a large botanical book, and it has large images and the half-page images, and it had some text that I could also use in journals. This was a big book. I sold a lot of these pages in my shop. Those are the ones I'm keeping. This book is fun. This is, I forgot the name of it, but it is by Jan Marsh, and I also got this on Amazon. And it's landscapes. You can fold that into your journal, and the flowers will be facing the right way. And then other books that I've just picked up at flea markets with botanical drawings. This I actually got at Barnes & Noble. I paid full price for this book too because I just really wanted these botanical images. It was so beautiful. So I splurged on that one. This one is from a book called England is a Garden. And I may have gotten that on Amazon also. Yeah, England is a Garden. And it's beautiful. It's got sketches of buildings and things, and then the beautiful color florals. Oh, this is the landscape one. It's by Henry Terry, a Victorian flower album. If you wanted to look for that on Amazon. This is the end paper, or the flyleaf, of that book. And that's really pretty too. And then along the wildlife lines, I do have a book of North American wildlife. I didn't bring that one in with me, but it's got great images of animals. And I do like the illustrations. I think most of us prefer the illustrations over the photographs, so I look for the books that have illustrations. So this was a very large bird book, as you can see, and lots of pages of that. So there are bird books, animal books, insects, butterflies, all kinds of wildlife books that you can look for. Next category is technical. I call it technical, but it could be math books, engineering books. This one is Advanced Mechanical Drawing, and it has, the text is cool looking, and it also has really neat mechanical diagrams. And this one is really neat because some of the diagrams are fold-out pages, like you just saw. But just these little things you could cut out and add to a collage. So I love books like that. And I had my dad's engineering book, or was it engineering? No, mechanical. He was, wasn't a mechanic, he was a machinist. He's retired now. And this is, I think this is one out of his machinist's handbook. So it has the cool tables. So these kinds of books are fun. Or maybe this was out of his book. Anyway, I've gotten a couple at flea markets also. And included, well, look at that. That came from a flea market in a binder. It's really cool. I love the green colors. Graphs. I also had a book or two about like ham radios, and so I keep those items in the mechanical or the technical section. Vanishing points of inclined lines, so I think this is architecture, drafting. But anything that has these kinds of diagrams and even the pictures of the tools that they use, I put in there. Those are just really fun to just put a page in a journal or cut the images out to use in collages. Children's math books, college math books, those are really fun too, with all the numerical equations and images in those books. Next category is fashion and sewing. And I love fashion and sewing pages and books. Now, some of those books I showed you, both botanical and the technical and all that, if the book covers are small enough and cool enough, you can use the covers also, but I just had the pages. I don't have covers except for that one mechanical drawing book. These book pages are these were all big books, so I don't have covers for these, but I don't keep my pages in their covers usually because I just don't have space. I have a small place and I don't have space to keep full books. So I take the books apart, I keep the pages I want, and I usually put bundles of pages together to put in my shop. But these are fashion pages, and it was a book about a museum, and I've used pages from this book and talked about them before. And those are mostly photographs, but they're cool. They are on mannequins, and they're close-up details of the clothing, so they're really neat to use. Vintage books. This is a knitting book, so she's wearing a knitted outfit, and even though that's a photograph, the fashion photographs I do like to use. And fashion illustrations I like to use. So I have found several books over the years of fashion over the years. So it would range from, like Middle Ages or even before to the current period for the book. So, and then little black and white drawings or color drawings in some books. So I love those kinds of books. Another knitting book. Here's one that had the colored images, and this is from the 1700s, 1800s. This is a reproduction of a catalog, and it's on glossy paper, but I love the illustrations, so I'm keeping it. It's from an old Sears catalog. Lots of pages there. Work Basket magazine has usually it has one page of sewing pattern images in it. This is from a coloring book, a Vogue coloring book. Sewing books, sewing instruction books are fun for the photographs of the outfits and also the instruction pages. So this is probably from the 80s maybe. So, it's vintage and retro looking. More from the Vogue coloring book. This was a book on how to dress for your style. It had little quizzes to help you identify your fashion style. More from that museum book. So I used to find a lot of fashion books. I haven't in quite a while, but I still have a lot of the pages. Old pattern books are a great find if you can find them. This is called Fashion History. These are black and white pictures. So this is from an old sewing pattern book, one of the the ones that you could purchase and take home, the little catalogs. And then there are the big counter catalogs that they keep in the store for you to look through and find your patterns that you want. I did buy a couple of those on eBay. One was from the 80s and one is from 1969, which is my very favorite, which is this one. And I looked recently, and they're more expensive. They were expensive when I bought them, but they're more expensive now, if you can find any. So that's what these are from sewing pattern catalogs. So they're all mixed up. I had that museum book was a really fat book, so I have a lot of pages from that. So that's one of my favorite categories of books to find, because they're a little more rare to find, and I love them. Next category, number 6, is atlases, map books. So I have found quite a few of the very large atlas books, and this is the, the key index. This is the index. And so the pages are big. It's really great for big journals, and I love the pale green color, the text background, and you can collage on top of that. You could make envelopes out of it. And then, of course, you have the pages with the maps, and there are white index pages. I've got a lot more map pages. I just didn't bring everything in. I just had a sampling to show you. You can find maps in pretty colors. This is kind of typical, tans and blues. I love it when I find vintage maps that have a lot of pink in them. That's just the cover for a vintage map atlas. This is probably the pages from it. You can see pink and green and yellow in this. So these are wonderful pages here. You can find encyclopedias, like children's encyclopedias and textbooks that might have maps in them. And of course you can use road maps. These are more textbook. This is a history book, but this history book had a lot of maps, and I loved the colors. Like, isn't that cool? It was American history, I believe. Or it was, oh, I don't know. I don't remember the name of the book, but I love the maps in it. So don't just look for atlases. Look for history books, geography books, things like that. This is another atlas book that was a little bit smaller, and I love the globes. I take these globes and fold them in half and make little booklets out of them, and I think they're really fun. National Geographic sometimes have maps enclosed in them. This is like a plastic coated map. I got a whole stack of them at a flea market, and I ended up selling most of them, but I still have this one, and I did use some of it apparently. I need to get it out and use it. But I went to Alaska, so I kept that one. And city maps are fun. So you might find an old civic book, what do you call them? Municipal book. I had a really cool old municipal book, and it had road maps of the city or a county. This is the city of St. Clair Shores. So those are fun also. And this one is Historical Atlas. I have a lot of map pages to use. Number 7 is vintage covers. And you can use the pages too, but I got these books for the covers. This is a children's reader book, similar to a Dick and Jane, called More Friends and Neighbors. So the cover itself is beat up, but I could give it some tender loving care and make a nice journal out of it. And I would definitely use the pages. Alice in Wonderland. I got this for the pages, but also, does it have a picture on the cover? No. But I can take this cover and Mod Podge it to the front cover. So I did get this one for the pictures and the text inside. And this is the Arthur Rackham version, which is really fun. There's the Disney version. There's Tennille, the John Tennille, who is the original illustrator, which I love, but I also love the Arthur Rackham illustrations. I love finding old textbooks. So I have this one, and I'm hoping to make like a random journal with no theme, just really fun stuff in it. And I had another one that was just like the same size, but it's blue, and I'm using that right now to make my Mechanical SeaWorld journal, which you probably have already seen by the time these videos get listed or get published. But I love old textbooks. I have used quite a few to make eclectic journals. They're really fun to use, and I save some of the pages when I gut them, because like I said, I don't have room to store them all. But I save some of the pages so that I can make ephemera with images. And then the little vintage books that are so awesome. Look at that tiny little book with that beautiful image. These are a little harder to find. I have quite a few, but some of them I've had for a long time because I have so many journals to make. And I've sold a lot of book covers like these. Love this one. Here's another textbook, but older. Elementary English in Action and Social Utility Arithmetics. So there's an example of math pages that are really fun to use in collage and on tag background and things like that. So those are just some examples of book covers you can use. You can also use newer book covers. You might find, well, I should have gotten them out, but I get from my library, they sell a bag of books for $1 or, 2 books for $1. It just depends, and depends on which library, but sometimes I just look for plain novels, and I look under the dust jacket to see the color of the book cover, and I will just use them, and then I can Mod Podge or do mixed media on the cover to decorate it the way I want it. So don't forget about just plain book covers too. All right, number 8 is also book covers, but it's its own category also. Along with little golden books, we all love to use Reader's Digest. They are harder to find because the newer ones have just a solid cover, but the older ones have beautiful patterns. So if I find them, if they're in good condition, I will get them if they're a good price. And I use these quite a bit. I like the size. Oh, here's an example of just a plain one, a small one that I could just do my own thing on. On that one, I could even stamp and emboss an image or something. So these are just some of the Reader's Digest book covers that I have. I have quite a few. And I've sold a lot of them in my shop too. I just find lots and lots of books at the flea markets. Number 9, we're almost done. Number 9 is cookbooks and craft books. I put them in the same category because they're both domestic instructional books. Let's talk about the craft books first. And they're usually large, but I would use this to make a domestic arts journal. You can, if you want to know what that is, you can look on YouTube for pretty Diane H. domestic arts journals, or I have a playlist of domestic arts on my channel, so you can see what I do with books like this. I would use the pages. You can cut lots of fun images out to make journal cards, pockets, ephemera, both the images and the patterns and instructions, diagrams. That would be fun. And the pages, you can fold the pages in. See, these would be really fun journaling cards. And I would just have so much fun making this into a domestic arts cover. This is even bigger, but I might use that also. It's a little bit bigger than I like to use, but I could consider it. But I bought this. I love the cover, and I love the inside, the dolls and the patterns. So sometimes you might not want the cover, or it might be too big for you to use the cover, but the pages are awesome. So take a look inside the craft book covers and see what the pages are like. This was a stencil book. I like it when they're matte pages. A lot of the craft book pages are glossy, but older ones are matte. I think this came out of a Good Housekeeping Crafting magazine. So I have beautiful cross-stitch book pages, all kinds of children's crafts and vintage craft books. This is for making vintage historical doll costumes. So it's got really cool patterns. I thought this was really fun. A book about, you could buy these doll heads with arms, I guess, and then you could make them into these beautiful pieces, not to play with. Embroidery books. A little pink one, Picture Lessons in Dressmaking. So some of these pages would fit into the sewing like this. This is from a binder, a sewing book. But those are craft book page examples. And then, of course, cookbooks. A lot of people use old cookbooks or even new cookbooks. Binders are often used as cookbook covers, but sorry for the noise as I slide things around on my plastic tabletop. But binders is my last category. So these are just some examples of some cookbooks I have in my collection. I have the Delineator cookbook from the Delineator Home Institute, and this is a really thick one. I should have taken it apart by now, but I haven't. This is from 1934, but I like it for mainly the cover, but it does have some pictures inside and the recipes, of course, you can use. This one is a fun one, Pennsylvania Dutch Cookery. I still have the pages in there also. I don't think this one has any pictures, but I like the cover. This is a fun cover. I've used that a couple of times, at least once. Maybe I've only made it once, but I thought it was really cute. And the Junior Cookbook, I love the gingham. I like the image here. And the pictures inside are cute. So lots of fun things you can do with these pictures. You can also use little vintage booklets. I would put this on cardstock or even glue it to the front of a hardcover book and make a journal out of that. The same with all of these. Look at that. And some of them have a front and back image. I took one booklet and made 2 journals with it because of the front and the back images were both awesome. And then the last category is binders. You've seen the Better Homes and Gardens gingham cook recipe binder, I'm sure. I don't have one of those right now. Well, I do in my kitchen. I have this, the Complete Family Sewing Book, and that is a really beautiful 1970s version of, it's a 3-ring binder, and really fun images on it. And the pages, if you can find one of these, it's great. And this one is in excellent condition. So they came, you would get an envelope in the mail every month with the next section of instruction. And they come with the holes in them, and they're like this, but they are perforated, I think. Yeah, they're perforated in the center. So if you wanted to put that in a journal in the center of a signature, you'd have to reinforce that. But this is a great binder. There are, of course, gardening binders, and this one is a Betty Crocker picture cookbook. And this one is a 5-ring binder. This one isn't that old, but it's beautiful. And it has the vintage images in it. I think it's a reproduction of an older book. So it's gorgeous. I love it, and it's in great condition. And then, I love this one. I used to have one that had this picture on the cover, but this is the dust cover. But look at that. I like that. I would use this somewhere inside because I would not want to lose that 1950s image. But I love this. I've had this for a long time, and I just haven't done anything with it. But I want to. I was looking for the date on it. I think it's from the 50s. But not used much because it's in good condition. 1951. First edition. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. I probably shouldn't make a journal out of that. I wonder how much that's worth. I didn't even realize I had a first edition. And this is in really good condition. The dust jacket isn't in great condition, but it's still pretty nice. And then, in addition to those large binders, I have been fortunate enough to find quite a few vintage recipe binders in the smaller size. The kind that are made for you to put your own recipes in. And I've made some journals out of some of them. So they often will have envelopes in them for you to tuck your recipes in. And then divider pages, and then blank pages for you to write on or to glue recipes on. This one has recipes tucked into the pockets, so it's really, really cool. This is a treasure. And look how brown the papers are. So I do want to make a journal out of this. And here's another one that wasn't made for a recipe binder. It's just an old style binder with the cloth cover and the smaller size. I don't know if you can buy binders this size anymore, and it's 3 rings. It says Sterling Loose Leaf Book, number 4588. And somebody took their Better Homes and Gardens Lifetime Cookbook and put it in here. Maybe their binder got damaged. I had a version of that cookbook in its original binder, and I made a really awesome journal with it. And the cover was just fantastic. It looked Art Deco because it was from the 30s. It was simple, but the typing on it, the text, the font looked Art Deco. But anyway, they took their book out of that binder and put it in this plain binder, and it's got old notebook paper in the back. So I have a blank canvas here that I can decorate and make any kind of journal. It doesn't have to be a recipe journal. So that is my list of book categories. There are others, like the little Hallmark gift books. They're usually pretty cute to use, at least use the pages. Maybe make a small journal with, with the covers. And just all kinds of book covers, books that you can look for to use for the covers or the pages, or images cut from the pages, or all of the above. So I also had another ledger I was going to show you, but I forgot to bring it in here with me. But it's a binder, and it had envelopes. It's like a household management book. So those kinds of unusual binders I like to look for. I don't actually go out looking for them, but when I find them, I bring them home. So I hope that this was helpful to you, to give you some ideas for some different kinds of books to look for while you're shopping, to go to Amazon and look for, or whatever the discount bookstores, online bookstores are, wherever you like to shop for books. Thanks for watching, and now I have to put all these books away. I hope you're having a creative day today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.